According to folklore, here we are on what was once known as Millionaire's Circle at Mountain and Meadow Run Lake. My grandfather had the foresight to purchase a piece of property here over 70 some years ago. And here is that piece of property. It's Memorial Day 2022, and hopefully it will be the last Memorial Day that this structure, which has given us many years of pleasure and heartache, will be rebuilt for new generations to enjoy their time. According to family lore, my grandfather built this structure out of old boxcar wood. Before we discuss the structure of the cottage, let me tell you a little bit about the people that were the heart of the cottage. This is a picture of my grandfather Joseph and my grandmother Anna. I never met my grandfather as he was deceased before I was born, but I lived with my grandmother until my high school years. In this picture, you will see my father in the center of the picture in the red Hawaiian shirt. He was an only child, but he is surrounded by my mother, who was one of 7, and her 3 sisters. In the top left-hand corner is my Aunt Anne. Next to her, my Uncle John, then my mom, my Aunt Margaret, my Aunt Evelyn, my Uncle Stanley, and my Uncle Ted. Picture compliments of my cousin John, taken many years ago on the steps of the cottage. My father was the custodian for the cottage. He had many rules and regulations for us to follow when we used the cottage. Safety first. Getting the pump started was always an issue. However, his final recommendation was if it wouldn't start, that we were to remain until, quote, Jake came. Unfortunately, my father died in January one year. I'll leave you right there. There were many activities at the cottage. Blueberry picking was one of my aunt's favorite, and here you'll see them with their pies, canned blueberries, and fresh blueberries. We had bonfires, went swimming, birthday parties, fishing, sometimes just relaxing. At one point, we even had a cottage uniform. Oh, and then there was the summer that the lake was drained. Cottage, which despite many years of discussion, has always kind of remained just being called the cottage. Reportedly, this structure started out as a pavilion, but over the years, it has had some improvements. It has had many different colors, starting out as white, and then there were the battleship gray years when my mother, Catherine Waxmonsky, decided to paint it with free paint. The shutters were made by my Uncle John. They are probably the most distinguishing feature of the cottage, as everyone now calls it the little yellow cottage with the shamrock green shutters. The roof was repaired years ago by my brother, my cousin, and my uncles. Unfortunately, it is showing the test of time. Old has taken over, and it is beginning to crumble. We'll go inside and I'll take you through the history, as I know it, of the cottage. We'll enter the cottage through the side door. There is always discussion about what is considered the front of the cottage. Some people consider the lakefront, the front of the cottage. Others consider the road, the front of the cottage. Entering through the side door eliminates that discussion. As we enter, we'll go into the kitchen. The kitchen was renovated several years ago by my husband John and my cousin Tony. It was renovated with cabinets that our neighbor gave us from his old kitchen. It took them quite a while to demolish the kitchen, as the original sink was placed in a pinball machine. The water. The water has always been an issue at the cottage. For several years, the cottage did not have its own well, but rather use the well from the neighbor's cottage. One would have to prime the pump at the neighbor's cottage and then come over and prime the pump here. Despite putting in our own well, the water remained metallic, and so for 70 years we have carted water back and forth to the cottage. As we enter through the hallway, we see the refrigerator, which has its own story. For many years, it would not keep ice cream hard. We finally discovered that because we did not spend much time at the cottage, we never put enough frozen food in. We have now solved that problem, and our ice cream remains hard. As we enter this bedroom, we see that the bedrooms are kind of tiny. A queen-size bed fills the room. This is our air conditioning at the cottage. Oh, and our electrical system. Here is our screens, which kind of keep some of the bugs out when they don't fall into the bushes. This is the room with the most interesting feature. It has a curved wall. Not quite sure how my grandfather and his friends did it, but they somehow put in a curved wall. We'll now enter the second bedroom. The second bedroom is filled with sleeping quarters and storage space. There's the linen closet, a bench with the bedding. As we leave the second bedroom, we'll head to the bathroom. For many years, the cottage did not have hot water, and one would have to boil water to wash the dishes or to wash your hair. But a bathroom was renovated several years ago. However, the trick with the bathroom is, how do you turn the lights on? The light switch is behind the refrigerator. As with all old cottages, plumbing and septic continue to be an issue. This is the cozy communal living space, which also sometimes serves as a bedroom. Above, we have the electrified chandelier. I'm not quite sure who did it, but it has worked for several years. As with all modern spaces, no matter how cramped, one has a big screen TV, the porch. Probably most of our time has been spent on the porch. My cousin Pat generously screened in the porch several years ago, and it became our main area. Dinners, breakfasts, lunches, all took place on the porch. At one point, it was even a sleeping area. It still remains one of our favorite spots. Unfortunately, it's starting to rot. It is being invaded by bugs. The deck. Now here's a story for you. Several years ago, our next door neighbor, Joe, came over and said, "Would you like his deck?" He then loaded it on his payloader, drove it over, and my husband and my cousin attached the deck to the cottage. It probably is the sturdiest part of the cottage. Storage has always been an issue at the cottage. Several years ago, my cousin Tony decided that under the deck would be a good storage spot. Unfortunately, no one has entered Tony's world for several years. Here the cottage sits in all of its glory. It has served us well for many, many years. However, unfortunately, as many contractors have pointed out to us, it is not even sitting totally on its foundation anymore. Saving the best for last, we entered the cellar. My husband has hit himself repeatedly on the head while entering the cellar. Beware, one is never sure what we'll find down here. One summer, there was a family of skunks. The cellar contains the hot water heater, the pump, the crumbling foundation, and various other remnants of many years of life at the cottage. Several years ago, a pipe in the kitchen broke, and I had to crawl on my back to that little pipe way back there and solder it together. We will miss the old place, but as we look upon the sparkling water and feel the breeze in our face, we are filled with excitement for rebirth and renewal. Well, some of us are. Others are just relaxing.